She's a new to the Jisha job, JJ. Good evening and welcome to the monastery, Sokuzan Monastery. And normally, usually, on Fridays, Sokuzan does the basic Buddhist teachings talk, but since he's not here, I'm going to do a version of that out of the Shinsen Ming, or Training the Mind by Sokuzan. And so he's out in California teaching out there. What is the retreat called there? What's the name for it? Anyway, he's teaching
5 Pillars of Zen.
He's teaching 5 Pillars of Zen at Jikoji Buddhist Zen Soto Zen Buddhist Retreat Center there in Los Gatos? Anybody can't remember? I've been there many times, but I can't recall the name. But it's right on the San Andreas Fault, if that helps. Good place for everyone. We're all on the San Andreas Fault. So I'm sure he's doing a wonderful job. He sent some pictures. Looks like a splendid situation for him and for them to be able to receive his teachings on the 5 Pillars of Zen. So tonight, will he be back next week? I think so.
Tuesday. Tuesday.
Yeah, so he'll be back teaching this again on Fridays, more than likely, unless he just stays out there, which is unlikely. So this is a Trusting the Mind, or the Shinsen Ming, or the Heart Mind of Sokuzan. The Chinese is Sengzan. This is translated by Chisho's favorite translator. I don't know if he's even here. I don't see him. Red Pine. So I love Red Pine. I think he's fantastic. But Chisho what is his characterization of Red Pine? I don't remember in a sentence. Crap. I don't know if he'd go that far, but it would probably be some kind of a Sanskrit, like Shakrat. Shakrat, he would say something. So anyway, this, I just thought I'd talk a little bit about here, just pulling a line out of here. Actually, Ondo picked one out here she thought would be interesting. So this is of the various verses. This is number 17. And if you haven't read this, either this translation or other ones that are also very good. Returning to the root, you find the meaning. Following the light, you end up confused. What is going to the root, you find the meaning. Following the light, you end up confused. What I understand by that teaching is that to follow a relative idea about something, to figure something out, confusion keeps doubling up on itself. But if you return to the root, you actually get the meaning. And what my way of understanding that is, this is the root. Going to the root of consciousness, not into the library necessarily, though I like libraries. You? No. We all like libraries, kind of. So I'm not sure how much I can say on that, other than come back to what I'm kind of harping on all the time is get to the wall, sit down, go, you find out. This is not something that I can describe, though with good questions like the ones that we had today. Questions are very helpful to help all of us together go down into something in a way that I may not have come up with on my own, but may be helped by your question to speak more directly about what this is. It helps a little bit, but it doesn't help. Not particularly encouraging to say, what is this? To say it's not separate. It's not two things. It's not separate things. Though our consciousness is filled with that, because the very nature of consciousness is to break up into all kinds of parts just like take any oak tree, for example. Why not just 3 leaves? Why countless? How many leaves on an oak tree?
50,236,522.
I disagree. Well, that's probably hundreds of thousands, would you say, just as speculation? Any given oak tree. So the idea here is to go to the root. And what is the root? It's like the root of a tree. The interesting thing about roots is they're in the darkness. But without roots, you don't have a tree, you don't have blossoms. That's why one of the images of the Buddha's Dharma is the lotus. The lotus root is buried in mud. It's buried in the mud of confusion or darkness, or however you want to use that particular image. But what shows up is the lotus, the flower on the surface of the water. Yes.
Biyun bowing. What is your translation of this word meaning? Like following the root of something to find meaning?
Yes. Okay. So meaning, you could look up the meaning of meaning, and it probably would give us some kind of a description that would be satisfactory. But the meaning that is being referred to here is ultimate. What this is, this is what back in the turn of the last century, the existentialists were trying to find out what is the fundamental nature of existence. What is it to be existent? There wasn't any particular mind training there that I know of anyway, so they were trying to do it with the thought process, including a very refined form of speculation about it. If you read Albert Camus, or if you read Jean-Paul Sartre, fancy names for just a bunch of people who studied stuff, wrote books, they went into that way, trying to find what is the meaning, and they came up with something very interesting, the existential angst, the worry about not being able to find anything. Whereas the Buddhist Dharma is about going further into that, using the consciousness itself, sitting practice of meditation, to go in and actually see that anything that shows up as a thing, whether it's a thought, an emotion, a word, a concept, any kind of a construct, is just that. It's a fabrication that covers up the true meaning. So the relative meaning, you already know, this is a fancy word for that, is Sambriti Satya, is an ancient teaching in Sanskrit. Relative truth has anything that you say has an opposite, so that's relative truth. It's relatively true. Just like daytime is relatively true because of nighttime. You would go on and find relative meanings. Gets its meaning, and then there's all kinds of relativity that comes up around that. You can't plant flowers in a snowbank, but you can plant them in dirt with sunshine and so on. But what can you do with a snowbank? Well, there's just, it gets very, very complex and so on, going all those directions. But if you come back to ultimate meaning, or Paramartha Satya is the Sanskrit, that's going to be helpful to you. But it certainly has been helpful to me to study that in that way over the last number of years. That ultimate meaning, very nature of ultimacy, is there's no otherness to it. It's just the conventional way, and the way we talk about it in this particular teaching is it's just consciousness only. So consciousness showing up as this, or as you, as this person, or this sound coming out of these vocal cords is not there. All of these are, though they are differentiated everywhere, and grasping, rejecting, and shutting down is materialism of various sorts, getting something, stopping something. All of that lends itself to more circularity, more dizziness, and more suffering. So the idea of meaning relatively is to get the good stuff and keep away the bad stuff. It's relative. But the ultimate meaning is to see who this is, so you have no question. You have no question about who you are. You cannot be frightened by anything. Even your own demise, your own death becomes imminent. That doesn't mean that your close friend is dying and passing away, that you aren't just, oh, who cares, and everything is empty. That's a different kind of emptiness. It's an emptiness of nihilism or futility, which is another polarity where you've taken ultimate truth and turned it into a relative construct that says, well, if everything is empty, why do anything? That's a misunderstanding of it, a misunderstanding of the fundamental meaning. The fundamental meaning there is wisdom, and there's no, other than wisdom, there's no Western equivalent to jnana, or sometimes pronounced jnana, like prajna, is transcendental, seeing beyond the duality of this and that, right and wrong, up and down, life and death. That's prajna. So difficult to relate to your word or your question about the idea of meaning, rather without getting somewhat relative about it, because that's why it's sometimes been said that if you realize what this is, you won't know what it is, because that the whole knowledge construct in the consciousness has come apart, as Govind said when he translated the Heart Sutra, falling apart, nothing to do. That's because there wasn't anyone left to do anything. So more about that, if you can take us closer to what it is when you ask the question, what is it?
Biyun bowing. I'm wondering what ultimate meaning, how ultimate meaning relates to not knowing.
Very similar. The relative structure of what's happening in consciousness, if one has realized the ultimacy of everything, the so-called things, it's more like a not knowing, because there's no identity that knows anything, but consciousness knows it. So that the response that you're getting right now is coming out of consciousness. It's not a credential. Oh, I have so much knowledge in my consciousness, and I'm so kind to give this to you. It just spontaneously occurs. When I say spontaneous, I don't have to deliberate about it or think about it or ruminate about whether what I'm saying is right or will this be helpful to you. That's your business. My business is to be as direct and sincere and honest as I can, and it's not particularly difficult to do that anymore. More?
Biyun bowing, you said consciousness knows.
Yeah.
And then I wondered, can I know consciousness?
That's still, there's ground, path, and fruition, and that's still part of path. Ultimate knowing is not knowing anything, but not ignoring anything. So there's still a quality of somebody knowing something regarding the question you're asking. So there's still something happening. There's still some kind of a deepening of knowing that goes beyond the relative knowing and goes into what could be called ultimate knowing, which is nothing in particular is known, because nothing is separate from that which knows. So that's why I sometimes say, everywhere you look, you don't see anything but this. That's why it's sometimes called a mirror, because you look at it, it's reflecting back what's looking at it, or not necessarily who, but what. Consciousness is looking at consciousness, just like this illusion is talking to an illusion. Not something you believe in, but something you consider as you go along, as you work with your own mind stream, your own hope and fear, your own difficulty. Just work with that teaching that there is nothing separate from anything else. That's, if you think there is, that's the illusion of that something needs to be done or fixed or stopped or enhanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Biyun
You got
bowing.
more?
I got more.
Go for it.
Thanks. On the path,
Yes. On the path. Let me have it.
you speak of ground, path, and fruition.
I do.
On the path, is everything real?
No. The path is made up of all kinds of chemicals and all kinds of differentiation as you go on, and it's different for each person. The ground is some kind of difficulty or suffering that you've tried everything, and finally you stumble into the Buddha's Dharma, or the truth, awakened truth. And then if you have a teacher teaching community, then you begin to practice that, and that's going to show up so differently for each person. And it could be flooded with all kinds of otherness for a long period of time. And there will not be an instant where that has gone away. There may be a time, an area, not necessarily a moment or an instant, where what you've been looking at, you realize has no status as a thing. It's an illusion. Even though it's solid as a brick, it has no status as something. And you know it, you realize it. Like the dream you had, you realize you're in the dream, yet you realize it was we were talking about it earlier today, that you totally were able to do all kinds of things. And then you were, in one sense, you were liberated in the illusion, because you were not believing in the illusion. You knew it was unreal, but you were still jumping around and doing stuff in that lucid dream. Similar to that. This is also a dream.
Sokuzan, earlier you said this line is about the root of consciousness. What's the root of consciousness?
Right here, right there. You're conscious, you're a manifestation of consciousness. Sentient being. And the root is there. It can't be found in the Second World War. Can't be found in political parties. Can't be found in psychology. Can't be found in EMDR or was it CBT? What's that called?
Cognitive behavioral therapy?
Cognitive behavioral. It has a relative accuracy that could be helpful to someone in a particular situation that they're in. It could be very helpful. But it doesn't work with the fundamental issue, which is mistaken identity. You continue, take psychotherapy, take whatever you want, take hallucinogens, and it will do all kinds of things in your consciousness, but it doesn't work with the fundamental misunderstanding or delusion that there's a separate being. There are no separate beings. That's an illusion. Even the physical form here and the physical form over there are unreal, not just because they're impermanent, but because they're basically unreal.
Sokuzan, sometimes, in the 30 verses, the alaya is referred to as the basis.
Yeah.
Is that similar to a root? Is that similar?
That is an area that you would see, you would run into where everything is stored. It's called the storehouse also. So and everything is very obscure in that area. So it's not like you can go and say, oh, here, like a room full of antique furniture. It's not that clear. It's still very, very discontinuous. But you can't find a self there. And that's, if you start to head in that direction, which could be called a direction, things can get worse. That's why it's necessary to have a teacher, a teaching, and a community. If you have those three, there's a good chance that your ship will not lose, the ship of the Dharma will not lose its ballast. You have some kind of a ballast, because otherwise to try to do this without any of that, probably will turn around and find a safe harbor and not go any further. And that safe harbor could show up as a belief. I've known people that have practiced Buddhism, even taught it in college for many years, and practiced as a Buddhist, gone right back into Roman Catholicism. Is that wrong? No. It's just that spiritual path works better for them as they see things. They did not check with me about it. What I've said, if you have to do that, go do it. And if they said, well, what do you think? I would say very gently, probably, I don't think that's a good idea. Especially if you're already started on this path and then you go another direction. But maybe the causes and conditions that arose in that particular person just needed to dip into this for a little while and come right back out of it and go back into a more theistic approach to the spiritual path. I don't know. But they didn't ask me, so I didn't comment on it more.
Mozuku bowing, you've said that the model of the eight consciousnesses is obviously just a model, the
Yes.
concept itself. What is the concept of the eighth consciousness pointing to?
Just that there's a lot of stuff that is hidden. A lot, not just a whole lot, but what is another word for a whole lot? That plus to the 100th power. That'd be good. A lot. It's so much that it doesn't even, that's the illusion part of it that's a lot. Actually, it's not even separate, but if you realize that, all of that otherness that shows up as this, and the lifetime you had 300 years ago, and all the karma that you developed and fought with and everything is trying to show up in this lifetime. Don't believe anything I say. I'm talking about what I'm looking at, not what I'm trying to get you to believe. Say, I'm looking at this. You're a student of mine, and you're asking questions, and I'm saying, you find out. You find out what the eighth, the alaya vijnana is, the historic consciousness. You find out. You find out what the seventh is, the klesha mind. You find out what the sixth consciousness is, the process or part of the mind that keeps track of who's feeling, who's thinking, who's perceiving as a particular identity with a particular body. 5 skandhas, more.
Mozuku bowing, is the storehouse just another way of saying dependent origination?
Yes.
Myoka bowing. If you're walking along and you trip and fall on your knee and it hurts and you
Just
say,
try to
ow.
be careful. Go ahead. Sorry.
If that happens, is this the root?
What do you want to know?
Or what takes us away from that situation that occurred?
If I understand what you're asking, what takes us away is the inability to receive what's showing up as it is. And the need based on that part of the consciousness called the klesha mind, the ego, to want to attribute cause. It's not that the cause might not be right there with the situation, but to want to leave that for who caused it, who is wrong, who's clumsy, who needs to watch where they're going, and all of those things. And you could elaborate on that further, but
Myoka bowing, when we take that path away from what happened, do we need to return to the root?
probably. When you say need, as far as the path goes, you're a fully ordained monk, you received these vows, you vow to be with all things, you need to look at those things and not abandon them, not cover them up with your ideas, opinions, judgments, evaluations, albeit even though they may seem relatively very accurate. And when that happens, when you see somebody do something and you have the tendency to want to blame that person for that, just observe that. You do not have to refrain from blaming. That's a misunderstanding. Although it's taught some places, and they can teach it all they want. I don't teach it. Just be aware of it. Awareness is enough.
Oh.
Did you say that the root of consciousness is based on mistaken
Consciousness
understanding?
is that. Or consciousness is a word for the root of everything. It's a way of talking about it. But you can go ahead and finish your question, and I'll try to I'll fiddle with it.
if consciousness is based on some mistaken understanding,
No. Let me stop you before you go any further. Consciousness is not based on anything. Consciousness is this. You can't find anything that isn't consciousness. You can't find anything that isn't arising in consciousness. And you can't find anything that consciousness isn't arising in. This is an obvious one here, but it's arising in everything. Everything is conscious. It just isn't consciousness in the same way that a person is, just like an elephant isn't consciousness in the same way a human is. So if you still have inquiry in that area, I'm happy to listen, but I want to make sure that you don't go off in an area where I'm not able to respond to that, because your question, the basis the question has is already misunderstanding.
it seems to me that you said that it is
What do you want to know
mistaken,
that will help? What?
then the root of consciousness is mistaken identity. Is everything in consciousness
A little
a
louder, please.
representation of mistaken
A
identity?
little louder, please. A little louder.
Is everything in consciousness a reflection of mistaken identity?
Only if it's grasped, only if it's rejected, only if it's ignored. The three poisons. If you don't do that, it's just a big illusion. And you're not concerned. That doesn't mean you take your eye off of it, or it doesn't mean anything. That's nihilism. It's not nihilistic. It's not eternalistic. It's just this. There is no otherness to it. More.
So what is consciousness without mistaken identity?
What do you think? I don't know.
Just this.
Huh?
Just this.
Yeah, just this. Fancy word would be wisdom. It's just jnana, Sanskrit word, jnana, or prajna, wisdom.
Thank you. I have also one question about those big words: wisdom, love, truth.
Wisdom, love, and truth. Okay, go ahead. Gotcha.
Are they rooted in consciousness?
No.
Where are they rooted?
Relative love has that kind of a structure, but ultimate love is not attachment, it's not demand. All of the three poisons are gone. It's just, if you wanted a relative word, it's just fundamental appreciation for everything. You fully appreciate, you're able to receive everything that shows up. The most terrible smell and the most wonderful fragrance. Receive. That's why you have a nose. It's not to smell the good things and plug your nose for the rest of it. Don't do that. Receive everything. If it comes in your nostrils, that's it. If it comes to the tip of your tongue, one taste. There's just reality. Taste it. Rochig is a Tibetan word for that. They use that one taste because they could teach wisdom more easily with an area of the sense fields that does not think at all. It's not that that's not tied in with the consciousness, which will do a lot of interpretation and say, well, that doesn't taste very good. Or that's, I don't particularly care for that taste, or that's too salty, or it's too sweet, or too. So this is why it's so important to receive. And you may produce, but don't produce unless you have to. This doesn't mean you couldn't be kind to someone and produce kindness towards someone who is in distress or needs your help. More?
I have more, but I don't know how to ask it.
Well, let me come back to you then.
I would like to know how those big words,
How to what?
how those three big words, wisdom, love, and
What do you want to know about them? I know about
truth,
those.
are.
Truth is not lies.
Now I'm curious about how is their connection with the ultimate reality.
Do you know what she wants to know? You?
They cannot know.
You just asked me a question and no one in here can tell me what it is you want to know. And I can't either. Could you paraphrase yourself and tell me what you want to know and use those words? Tell me what you want to know. If you can, please.
it seems to me that those words
not a
are
question.
that, I know.
You're
I know.
elaborate, see, wait, you're actually covering up by your elaboration. It seems to me that those words that's not helpful to you or to me. Ask me what you want to know. Do it.
Are they root, those 3 words, are they root of the ultimate reality?
Of course. Thank you. Of course they are, but they are still words. They're still words about something. There's no name for that, for love, even though the different traditions have tried to do that, because there's an understanding there is such a thing as agape, there's ultimate kind of love, or karuna. Oh, there's probably a lot of other ones I don't know about. There's this something that transcends the grasping, controlling, territorial kind of possession kind of love. That's not love. That's just a covetousness. You want something, you want to, and sometimes it goes into even greed, being in charge of everything, and you have to control everything. Painful, and it fuels the ego in a very painful way. So the other ones are, what were the other 2? Wisdom?
Wisdom, love, and truth.
So truth is, there's the 2 kinds that we talked about earlier, I think, was the relative truth. It's here and now it's gone, and then it's back. There's a sound and then there's silence. There's a living being, and then this will die, and then there'll be a corpse. But who this is and who this is can't be ended, because it has not begun. It's an ultimate. Consciousness is ultimate. There's no consciousness shows up as a body-mind complex for a while, and if that body-mind complex is lucky, it stumbles into a wisdom teaching instead of a teaching of control and who's ahead and how to build Bradley fighting vehicles or Abrams tanks, or that kind of horrible stuff that's just all over the world. It's a huge landslide of just looking at these huge trucks with atomic weapons on it. A human being that had some kind of a little bit of clarity would never build something like that. And the people would justify it, would say, well, what if the other country bombs us and you're going to bomb them back? It's insane craziness. But you can't step in the middle of that and say, stop making bombs. It's just a waste. You might feel good doing that. You might be able to talk to your friends about, well, at least we're protesting it, at least. But the fundamental misunderstanding has been ignored, because it's right here, your heart, my heart, or consciousness, not the blood pumping. Or it's right here, so you have to see it here. If you don't, then anything you do out there will just create more warfare, including at the kitchen table, including, well, I could go on and on, but that's why I'm encouraging you to see what this is, and why we're building this, again, this community mindfulness center, so some people that may not ever be a Buddhist could actually maybe sit down and watch their mind kind of go for a while, instead of just rely on whatever, fighting with their neighbors or with their spouse, or drinking, or just using drugs to just avoid everything. You might be able to sit down and just, let's look at this for a while. Would that help a few people? Maybe. I would like it if we could do a little bit of that. So if you can help me with that, help us do this. There's no money in it. If you say, well, why would you do that? Can't help it. I cannot help it. I don't make decisions about anything. And if you're making decisions, you're going to go in circles. I'm not accusing you of anything. You must have noticed. You can't really get anywhere.
Heavy bone.
Go right
Heavy
ahead.
bone.
Go ahead. Naveed.
You sometimes tell us to go right into the darkness,
Yes.
and in the line you just read, it said that go into the light and you will be confused.
Yes.
So, what are darkness and light are pointing to here? Bone.
My understanding is that to go into the darkness means, and I'm biased in this area, having been doing this for a while. Go into the darkness is to sit down and look at the confusion in your own mind. It does not feel lit up. Even if you spend reading some koans or some haiku or some inspirational whatever, Still, when you sit down and just look at the wall and watch the movement of the mind, it is not comfortable. And if it is, you need to sit more. So you can see the darkness there. There's a lot of, that darkness shows an image that is just pointing to not knowing or being confused or having something happening where you're not clear on what it is. Delusion. It's not saying that that won't, lighten up, perhaps, and perhaps not. It's the intention to see what it is that is so important, not the success story. That's materialism, as my teacher pointed out in his book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, using spiritual techniques to get ahead, get better, improve, be more enlightened, be more whatever. Not that you couldn't talk about, as he often did, basic sanity, but the basic sanity is already the case. You don't have to become sane. Just look at the craziness of ego, building these atomic weapons and horrible fighting with each other. The political situation is a mess, as I'm sure you all know. Adriana.
Adriana bowing. How can I practice taking only what is given? I find this to be very challenging for me. Bowing.
Well, just that you say it's challenging tells me, or tells anyone, and even you, say that you're very aware of that you're endeavoring to watch what comes your way, and you're endeavoring, near as I can tell by your question, to just receive that rather than add a bunch of things to it, interpretations and judgments. And the process of doing it, or the practice of working with that with awareness, is to just watch what comes and goes and stop trying to necessarily push it away, nor engage with it by blaming yourself or blaming others. And that practice, that awareness practice, if you're doing a lot of sitting practice, it will become more and more aware. You will become more and more aware of how you cannot succeed at that. It is the awareness of not being able to succeed that starts cutting at the root of ego. But it's a very, very precise way. It's called prajna. And there's no one doing that. It's just the nature of consciousness that when it bundles up into a ball of me, and my stuff, my ideas, what I want, what I don't want, what I think is right, that by just looking at that, eventually the nature of consciousness returns to a true nature, which is not separate from anything. This is when this is called wisdom, and then actual compassion, which is not an emotion or a feeling, can arise out of that wisdom in order to fundamentally serve others without looking for credentials at all, being concerned about what anybody thinks about anything. So it sounds to me by your question, you are doing it. It's just a matter of continuing to do that. Don't particularly look for results. And as you're not particularly looking for results, also notice how you keep looking for results. If you keep looking for something, some kind of clue that we're getting somewhere. I quite often have students who sit in front of me after we talk for a while say, "How am I doing?" to me. And I say, "You're doing okay. Keep going." That's my standard procedure. Being a little bit silly, but I wouldn't say that I might not talk about that person's specific practice if they've been sharing some dynamic. So I may, but generally it's just like, are you practicing? Are you sitting at all? A little bit? Are you studying? Are you practicing studying with the Dharma? And you are. I know, especially in the last several months, I've seen you come on here and ask questions and participate with the Sangha. Very important. You have the teacher sitting here. You have something that's being studied, in this case, the heart mind of Sosan. And then the community we have here, we have, a little over a dozen people on Zoom. We're in different parts of the country, let alone the world. I think the furthest one away would be Navid, who is in Iran, who joins us regularly. We have people who join from all over the place. And then people who join for a while and then they disappear. We just don't see them again. There's nothing wrong with that. So it isn't like someone has started and doesn't keep coming, but people's lives are very, very confusing. So no need to figure anything out. Tokugawa.
Sokuzan bowing. Question about roaching, one
Yes.
taste. Is another way of talking about that just that you could even taste something? That, I mean, because we want to go good, bad, salty,
Yes.
sweet, but it's just that there's even the possibility of something touching the tongue and there's taste occurring.
Yes.
Is that part of that?
If I'm following you, what you're saying, I would say yes.
And Sokuzan bowing, is that still path?
Yes.
And then would that same metaphor apply to awareness and experience?
What?
Awareness, experiences,
And awareness and experiences, yes.
just that we could even experience, that there could even be such a thing as duality. That,
Yes.
I don't know how to ask the question.
Well, I think you did, yes.
Okay,
I don't know if people are gonna understand what you're asking about. I do,
okay.
and that's, we don't have to worry about these guys. No, yes, I see what you're pointing at, and yes, and what you're driving in at there. What Chokanao is asking about is the nature of duality, being, also not being dualistic. Is that where you're going with it?
That's a helpful way to say it,
Yeah,
yes.
you cannot find a reference point. Because it's the realization here is that you surprise when you think you're lost in thought. There isn't anybody who can be lost in thought. It's impossible because there never was a separate being anywhere. This is an astonishing illusion of otherness, and people are believing this so intensely. They're willing to hammer on people with nerve endings and actually hurt and torture people, like is happening in Israel. Just if you hear some of those stories, which you can only listen to so much of it, realize these people must be, not only are they suffering, that they have to download and dump that suffering on others, but the people who are receiving the suffering, they're also, of course, suffering. So it's just, first noble truth of the Buddha is just everywhere. What's the best thing for you to do? Train your mind so you don't add to it. Because you're not separate from the worst criminal, nor the most wonderful saint. Not separate anywhere.
Shinbang, is there a difference in tasting just vinegar versus tasting two opposite tastes like sweetness and bitterness?
It's just taste. So we're not dismissing the sour, we're not dismissing the sweet, but we're also not picking and choosing. We aren't taking one over the other. We just notice the difference in them. So this is why I say look at the contrast between things. When I say hold very still and look at the contrast of the mind that is continually turning up ideas and judgments and opinions, evaluations, just look at them. Don't try to train your mind to not think like some teachings. I was taught to label thinking, return to the breath. I practiced it many, many years and taught it for many, many years. And then I just don't teach it anymore because I think it's better to, when I'm looking at, to look right at whatever arises rather than try to create some kind of a mindful person who can see more clearly. Shamatha Vipassana or Shini and Lakton. Those are valuable. If you're practicing, then make sure you have a teacher. Then he or she or they will probably work with you in such a way they'll tell you to drop the technique and just raise the gaze. This is Vipassana. This is taught in Shambhala. Yes?
Jishinbang, is it a difference when we taste two opposite tastes and do not reject them?
What do you want to know? Is there a difference? Yeah.
No, sorry. Is it still a duality when we
It's a duality.
taste equally two opposite tastes?
Is it still a duality?
Yes.
Sure. It's a duality. But it's not real. But you don't have to get rid of duality. You just see this, just like you don't have to get rid of your ego. And be as self-centered as you want. So whatever shows up is, but it cannot get a foothold if you see that that is unreal, that personhood that likes this, doesn't like that, and demands this, and it has hurt feelings over that or that is unreal. That doesn't mean the feelings are not there and not vivid. It just means they're unreal. I sometimes use speaking of one taste, and you've heard this story, I think. the story where I'm dreaming that a fly was crawling across my mouth, and I dreamed that the fly went into my mouth, and I bit down on the fly, and it was horribly, horribly bitter. And I woke up like this, and the taste, the bitterness, was no aftertaste. There's nothing at all. There was no fly. It was a dream, but it was a dream taste. And it gave me a little bit of this has been many years ago, but it gave me a little bit of an idea of how powerful illusions are. That was an illusion that is telling me or helping me, or maybe even you, about the nature of illusion. It's that real and vivid. It's solid in the dream. But this is just in the illusion of locality that's happening, and in the illusion of time, the now moment. There is no now moment. That presupposes a past and a future, which are unreal. I think we could close at this point, so thank you so much.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit.
May the meritless penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho-san shi shi-fu, shi-son-bu-sa mo-ko-sa. The 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.
I'd like to announce that tomorrow we will have, as we do once a month, have monk training day. So the people who are fully ordained, the ones that aren't in retreat or off in California or wherever else they are, either will be in the monastery or on Zoom. And there will be a little bit different kind of training that are called training interviews. In the Shambhala tradition, this is called mock interviews. So you would sit and face somebody, and someone would be the student, and the other person would be the teacher, and you would switch around and present each other with questions and so on. So this will be happening tomorrow. The first session starts at 10:30, and then that goes, I think there's 6 people there. Is that 4?
Correct.
6. And then there's another one in the afternoon at 1:30, and that goes,
2:30, sorry.
Huh?
2:30.
2:30. So it's much shorter than the monk training days usually are, but should be very interesting to see how people interact around question and answers. So if you can join us, I don't think there's a fee, is there? No, we haven't started charging it. Well, if we get really good at this, it's going to cost you guys. Thank you.
There's a tip jar for each monk, though.
There's a tip jar for each monk. Hope you all have a pleasant evening.